These two FNAF characters in question have been boiled down to just blonde hair and green eyes. People only care about Vanessa because of her connection to Vanny, and people only care about Elizabeth because of her connection to Baby. And I admit I've been guilty of this myself. But I think both Vanessa and Elizabeth are more interesting than they initially appear to be. I don't think we, as the fandom, should just be looking at these characters as green-eyed, yellow-haired nobodies that only matter because they're related to more important pieces of the story. Now, to quickly bring up the 7-foot-tall animatronic clown in the room, Elizabeth and Vanessa are often compared to each other because there are many references to each other, and we'll be discussing that shortly. But in order to examine why Elizabeth and Vanessa are connected together, we first need to talk about why Elizabeth and Vanessa are still important apart. Circus Baby and the girl whose remnant possesses her are often conflated as one entity, but they're clearly not. In Sister Location's non-canon office night where Mike ignores Baby's instructions, we hear Baby talk about Elizabeth like they're separate people, and at times she even mimics Elizabeth's voice. Scrap Baby is characterized and written wildly differently from Circus Baby. Whereas Circus Baby is highly intelligent, deceptive, cunning, faux innocent, and manipulative, like you might expect a killer AI to be, Scrap Baby is blunt, direct, and speaks a lot more plainly, even calling William Daddy, which is insanely different to how Circus Baby talked about William. I don't believe that bad storytelling is why this is the case. In Sister Location, Circus Baby asks us to remove a chip from her body that's been theorized and heavily hinted to contain a mimic program. She says,
"There is something bad inside of me."
and then she wants us to save what is good. So something happens to Baby when we remove that chip. The good and the bad are separated. And lo and behold, next time we see Circus Baby, she no longer mimics other people or lies about anything, and seems to have completely changed her goals from pretending to be human to simply following her purpose and making her father proud. Scrap Baby doesn't act or talk like Circus Baby because she isn't Circus Baby. She's Elizabeth. That's why she calls William her father and why she acts so differently than before. With Circus Baby's consciousness out of play, Elizabeth's remnant is the only thing left to pilot this animatronic body. She even says it feels like home in Pizza Sim when she, her father, and her brother are all in the same building. However, Scrap Baby is a lot more inclined to murder than you might expect Elizabeth, a normal little girl, to be. This could be because the trauma of getting killed and subsequently electrocuted with controlled shocks as a direct result of disobeying her father has deeply changed her, but Scrap Baby also talks of, quote, doing what she was made to do, and other lines like,
"It feels like my birthday. Did you have a gift for me?"
feel sort of out of character for Elizabeth to say. Even the novels bring this up. It makes no sense for a, quote, sweet and innocent girl to be this killer. So I believe Scrap Baby is still very much acting according to her programming, like how Circus Baby subconsciously counted the children in the room with her and absent-mindedly killed Elizabeth once she got close enough.
My stomach opened, and there was ice cream.
She doesn't say she opened her stomach or that she gave Elizabeth some ice cream. She describes it as if it happened without her input or consent. I think Scrap Baby is inclined to, quote, do what she was meant to do because she's still an animatronic designed to kill. But the remnant of Elizabeth is why she wants to make her dad proud and why she's no longer calculatingly deceptive. The reason I bring this all up is because it's important to draw a line between who Baby is and who Elizabeth is, especially now considering where FNAF's story has been going. I could go on about this topic, but I made a video dedicated to Elizabeth and Circus Baby, so I'll just link that in the description and you can go watch that if you want. Now let's talk about Vanessa. Vanessa is a lot of things. In the trailers for Security Breach, she seems to genuinely care about Gregory and try to help him, but that version of her isn't canon, so we can't consider that her real personality. In the actual version of Security Breach, Vanessa is pretty abrasive and irritated all the time, and not just to Gregory.
Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown.
Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown. Me.
One could say this is sort of realistic. I mean, considering what Vanessa is going through behind the scenes, she's going to therapy for a reason, it's not too hard to believe that she would be aggressive and impatient on the surface. But the thing is, you can't write your character to be unlikable on the surface, but become someone you grow close to and empathize with after a while, and then give them absolutely no screen time to accomplish that. All you're left with is a shell of a writing trope that's not even half as interesting as its trailer. To be honest, the Vanessa we see in the FNAF movie seems a lot more like the Vanessa we were going to originally get in Security Breach. She's likable and competent, and even though she's clearly hiding something, she's still truly good at heart and even has a surprisingly strong moral compass.
You can do whatever you want with your own life, but if you ever bring Abby back here again, I will shoot you.
My point being, Vanessa is more than just Glitchtrap's reluctant follower, and I think the way she's depicted in the movie proves that. I made a whole video on why I think Vanessa and Vanny are different people, which I will again link in the description. But what's important to remember is that Vanessa is still around and is still a key piece of the ongoing FNAF storyline. Someone gave Gregory access to the Pizzaplex underground maps, and if the Brazil ending isn't supposed to be totally fabricated, which I think it's not because there is otherwise no reason to use this ending to imply Freddy's personality chip is now in a healthy animatronic, Vanessa is still hanging out with Gregory, which makes sense, since it seems like part of the Burn Trap ending and part of the Princess Quest ending have happened as a ruin. Vanessa is still relevant to the plot outside of Vanny, whether you think they're the same entity or not. In any case, now that we've talked about why both Elizabeth and Vanessa matter when they're not talked about together, we should move on to why people talk about them together at all. The very first thing most people use as an argument when connections between Vanessa and Elizabeth are made is that Elizabeth is depicted to be a lot more of a ginger or strawberry blonde than Vanessa. And while that's technically true, it kind of dismisses other, far more important similarities between these two characters. Both have a mother who's MIA and a father who seemingly emotionally manipulated and abused them for a very long time. While we don't have technical evidence of William doing this to Elizabeth in the games, both the novels and the movie, as well as how William treats his sons, makes me think Elizabeth probably didn't have a very pleasant childhood even before she got killed. But if we are going to talk about physical appearance, Elizabeth's eye color has always been more important than her hair color. When Baby gets possessed, her hair doesn't change from red to blonde or ginger. It's her eyes that change from blue to green to signify Elizabeth's presence. There's also, Elizabeth just straight up not existing in the FNAF movie and being wholesale replaced by Vanessa. While it makes sense to give newer fans of the series a character to anchor themselves to when watching the film, I don't think such a big, unprecedented writing decision like that was made carelessly. I think there is a real reason for it. Consider also the 3-star security breach ending, which seems to reference the Afton siblings, with Vanessa taking Elizabeth's role. At this point, I feel like you need to actively be trying to ignore the connections being made between Vanessa and Elizabeth. And trust me, I understand wanting new characters to just be new and not connected to old ones. But even if you don't like Elizabeth and Vanessa having similarities as a writing choice, it's not right to deny that those similarities do exist. And it's even more not right to attack people in the fandom for pointing those similarities out. Okay. So we have established that Vanessa and Elizabeth have undeniable and intentionally written similarities. But why? What's the point of drawing connections between these two? Is it supposed to be thematic, like a repeating story arc? Or is it supposed to be more literal? There are a few main schools of theories on this. One idea is that the reason that Vanessa shares connections with Elizabeth, the reason that Gregory shares connections with the crying child, the reason that Freddy shares connections with Michael, and the reason Cassie shares connections with Charlie is all because the story of FNAF is an ever-reincarnating cycle of events. Things keep repeating and aligning in ways they really shouldn't be, like how the Bonnie animatronic and all characters named Jeremy have a repeated theme of having their face torn off. Kids keep dying at Fazbear locations, things keep going up in flames. Think of it sort of like Zelda. Different events and characters will keep resurfacing in slightly altered ways, but always keeping the same main theme forever and ever. While there's no real way to prove or disprove this theory, I've always liked it from a writing perspective. You can even tie stuff in like Remnant and Agony, even FNAF World being part of the reason why things are reincarnating. I've talked about this theory on this channel before, along with the content creator who came up with it, DWFan91, and I'll link that theory in this channel below. You should go watch it, he goes a lot more in depth with it than I did. Another theory is that Vanessa and Elizabeth's similarities aren't similarities because they're the same person. As in, Vanessa is just grown up Elizabeth. I don't particularly believe in this theory, or really like it all that much as a story choice, but there is some merit to this idea. It's often brought up that FNAF 1 through Pizza Sim are in-universe games according to Help Wanted, so it's technically possible that Elizabeth didn't get scooped by Baby. But that evidence is a lot weaker than the fact that Vanessa also has a dad named William/Bill that emotionally manipulated and abused her, along with Vanessa literally being Afton's daughter in the movie. And while Vanessa's story in the games could be made up, a therapist brings up how Patient 46's story was fake, but no such thing was pointed out for Vanessa. I don't think this theory is all that likely to be true, but I thought it should be mentioned. There's also the infamous robot person theory. You know, the idea that Vanessa is so similar to Elizabeth because she was made to be that way. Literally made. This is another kind of theory that can't really be disproven, but I still don't agree with it. The reason I am partial to theories like Gregbot or Cassibot is because there is genuine motive and reason to believe someone might recreate the crying child or Charlie in robot form. William was clearly experimenting with making human animatronics in the sister location bunker. And while I personally believe the voice behind psychic friend Fredbear in FNAF 4's final scene is Cassidy, if you do believe William is the one who said, "I will put you back together," then it would make sense for him to try and recreate his son. Cassie and Charlie are even more likely, with Henry literally creating a robot version of Charlie in the novels. To be clear, there is definitely more evidence for Gregbot and Cassibot that I haven't mentioned here, but I also made videos on that, which I will, again, put a link to under the video. Back to Vanessa Bot though. The main problem with it is that there is no indication that anyone would have made a robot to act like or replace Elizabeth anywhere in the series, unlike Cece and Charlie, so it feels a little unjustified to say Vanessa is a robot as a result. Finally, the theory that I personally think is the most likely to be true is that Vanessa isn't Elizabeth in a literal sense, or even a thematic sense necessarily, but that she was selected to be Glitchtrap's reluctant follower because she has so many similarities to Afton's actual daughter. It makes sense to me that the reason it's a person who's very similar to Elizabeth, and the reason it's a kid who's very similar to the crying child out of all people ended up being Glitchtrap's two henchmen, is because Glitchtrap is a mimic program trying to replicate Afton. It always bothered me that Vanessa isn't Tape Girl, but if the reason Glitchtrap didn't pick Tape Girl to become his lackey is because she didn't fit into the Afton family that Glitchtrap was trying to create, and instead opted for a blonde woman with green eyes and a father named Bill, was because Vanessa was a best candidate to play the role of Elizabeth. Then that weird decision on Glitchtrap's part now makes sense. Look at GGY. Why would it pick a literal child to be its apprentice when essentially anyone else would have been more useful? He's very similar to the son William lost. It even makes sense that Glitchtrap only has two followers in an Elizabeth actress and a Bite Victim actor. Why bring in someone to act like the wife that left you or the eldest son that tried to kill you when you could just keep the parts of your family that never quote-unquote wronged you? Ask yourself, if Glitchtrap can possess multiple people at once, which we know he can, why would he limit himself to two human henchmen? He corrupts the Pizzaplex's systems and seemingly every animatronic besides Glamrock Freddy to an extent. So if his power to spread himself has no cap, then why only have two henchmen? Why not spread yourself like a virus among the humans in the Pizzaplex and create more Vannies, more GGYs? Because while creating an army of reluctant followers is in Glitchtrap's power, it's not his desire. Glitchtrap isn't a plotting villain with a master plan like Afton is. It's trying to be Afton. William might have taken the opportunity to subjugate the masses to his will, but an AI pretending it's William has no reason to do that. Glitchtrap has no motive of its own, it's just a program. It's just doing what it's supposed to do. Mimic. So, is Vanessa really Elizabeth? No, I don't think so. At least, technically speaking. But I believe she's supposed to play the role of Afton's daughter. As for the identity of Vanny, if she is a separate person from Vanessa, who is she? I have no idea. Could be a twin sister, or a robot, or Fazgoo. I'll do a video on that eventually. In any case, thank you for watching. I know I've been gone a while, but I am back, and working on many more videos and even a special surprise in store. Subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.